I realized something was terribly wrong the very moment I saw the glow that shouldn't have been there. Not on my screen. Not in the data stream. But in the sky itself. I was driving back from the observatory around 4 a.m., exhausted, half asleep, when I glanced through the windshield and noticed a faint smear of turquoise cutting through the dark like someone had drawn a thin neon line across the heavens. I've seen hundreds of comets in my lifetime, but 3I Atlas always had a strange way of looking back at you. As if it wasn't passing by, as if it was approaching with intent. When I got home, I opened the telescope feed again, expecting to see the usual coma fuzz. Instead, the nucleus looked oddly structured. Not like a rock breaking apart. More like layers. I tried enhancing the frame, but half the image blocks were corrupted. And the corrupted areas weren't random static, they formed a perfect grid of missing squares, the kind you get when someone deliberately masks data. At first I thought, fine, maybe storage failure. It happens. Equipment glitches. Data packets drop. But then I checked 3 different archives. 3 different servers. 3 locations separated by thousands of miles. Every single one had the exact same squares missing. That's when a tiny knot tightened in my chest. I tried contacting the night shift analyst, Mia. Usually she answers instantly, but this time her status was set to unavailable, restricted session. I'd never seen that before. A few minutes later, an internal memo popped up on my dashboard. Do not distribute unverified optical data on 3I Atlas until review is completed. That might sound ordinary. But here's the thing, no one had sent out any request for verification. And there was no scheduled review. Someone inserted this instruction manually. Quietly. Silently. As if we weren't supposed to notice. When I called Tom, one of the few people I trust, he whispered so softly I barely recognized his voice. Look at the peripheral telemetry, he said. Not the main feed. The side sweep. I opened it. The hair on my arm stood up. The peripheral sweep showed a momentary intensification inside the nucleus, like a brief flicker. Too brief to be thermal expansion. Too sharp to be an instrument error. More like a pulse. A flash. Some researchers online already speculate about internal heating from unknown processes. No one says it aloud, but you can feel the unease in their posts. Before I could download the file for a deeper analysis, the entry vanished. Not erased, replaced. Overwritten with a new, much cleaner, much more boring version that showed nothing. A minute later another message appeared. Side channel logs temporarily unavailable due to recalibration. Nobody ran any recalibration protocol. I checked the event logs, 0 entries. Someone wanted us blind. A few hours later, another odd thing happened. A portion of radar readings from an independent station in Alaska just dropped offline. The files were there, but every waveform was replaced by a flat gray strip. The backup images had a black patch over the same coordinates. And interestingly enough, that black patch was added after the backup was archived. Who edits backups? When I reached out to a friend who works at that station, he simply replied, I didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. Let it go. But people don't say let it go unless there's something to let go of. Later that evening, a message began circulating through private astronomy groups. There was an unexpected, short-lived electromagnetic distortion over the coastal region last night. No official source said a word about it, but several amateurs with magnetometers confirmed the same spike. And the time? It lined up perfectly with when I saw the turquoise streak in the sky. Coincidence? Maybe. But the older I get, the less I believe in coincidences this clean. I started rechecking the comet's projected path using data from different observatories, Chile, Spain, Australia. The numbers matched, mostly. But there was a subtle shift, just a few arc seconds, repeating in several models. Subtle enough to dismiss. Consistent enough to question. When I mentioned it in our internal chat, the thread was deleted within seconds. Not archived. Not flagged. Deleted. Then came the strangest detail of all. Right before my shift ended, 2 colleagues privately messaged me saying they'd seen a faint, angular shadow inside the coma, not round, not random, but with edges. Straight edges. Like something solid was inside. But when they checked again, the shadow was gone, replaced by an officially approved dataset that showed nothing unusual. One of them wrote, "I don't think this thing is behaving like a natural comet. Don't quote me. Don't show this to anyone. There's a rumor, one nobody claims to believe but everyone repeats, that 3I Atlas didn't just wander into the solar system like other interstellar visitors. Some even say its trajectory seemed just a bit too refined, like it was avoiding gravitational wells rather than being pulled by them. There's another whisper spreading online. The glow isn't sunlight. It's output. Whatever that means. I'm not saying any of this is true. I'm not saying any of it is false either. All I know is this. Every time I look at 3I Atlas, I get the feeling it's not just coming closer. It's noticing who's watching. Unofficial channels? They're getting quieter by the day. Whether that silence means everything is fine, or that nothing is fine at all, that's for you to decide. By the next morning I had convinced myself I was overreacting. Sleep deprivation, bad coffee, too many hours staring at pixelated stars, that combination can make anyone paranoid. So I walked into the observatory telling myself I'd treat everything like a normal data review. But nothing that day felt normal. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually the place buzzes with low chatter, clicking keyboards, someone laughing at a terrible meme posted in the group chat. But that morning people sat in their chairs like they were afraid to be noticed. Eyes fixed on screens. Headphones on but no music playing. Even the automatic espresso machine sounded hesitant, grinding beans quietly like it didn't want to disturb anyone. When I logged in, a new internal banner appeared on the top of my screen. 3I Atlas observations under provisional confidentiality. Limit sharing to essential personnel only. There was no definition of essential personnel. And apparently nobody was willing to ask. I pulled up the latest batch of images. At first glance everything looked fine, the coma, the tail, the faint green glow. But as I zoomed in, I realized the nucleus looked too clean. All comets have noise around the core, little filaments and dust scatter. But this dataset showed the nucleus almost perfectly smooth. A shape that was suspiciously stable for something that had supposedly become more active in the last 48 hours. I checked the metadata. The usual timestamps were replaced by generic placeholders. Someone had scrubbed the encoding trace. That's when Mia finally showed up next to my desk. She didn't sit, she just hovered there, arms crossed tightly, as darting around like she expected someone to appear behind her. "You saw the revision logs," she whispered. I shook my head. "They replaced 3 hours of raw optical data with curated frames," she said. "Cleaned up the artifacts. Edited the telemetry. They didn't even try to hide it well." "Who did?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead she handed me a flash drive, the tiny metallic kind we all pretend not to use anymore. "Look at it at home," she said. "Not here." Before I could say anything, she walked away fast, almost running. I watched her disappear down the hallway without looking back. The whole thing made my stomach knot. Around noon, a strange notification popped up, one I'd never seen in 20 years of work. Certain orbital calculations have been temporarily restricted due to algorithmic errors. Algorithmic errors? These models have run flawlessly for decades. You'd need deliberate interference to scramble them. I tried running my own simulation on a local machine. Halfway through the process, the system stopped, flashed a warning, then forcibly closed the program. A colleague across the room swore under his breath. His simulation crashed at the exact same moment. There's a theory people float quietly. When multiple unrelated systems fail in sync, the systems aren't the issue. The permissions are. Later that afternoon, I went to check the magnetometer readings again. I wasn't expecting much. But the latest data had a new line in the log. Anomalous reading removed pending verification. Removed. Not archived. Not flagged. Just wiped. And interestingly, the timestamp of the removed entry was the exact minute that 3i Atlas made a subtle but measurable increase in brightness, something that had been noted on amateur forums, but completely absent from official reports. It was around this time that rumors started spreading about a blackout in the satellite imagery database. A 5-minute segment of global imagery was replaced with low-resolution cloud cover snapshots, identical images repeated several times. Anyone who works with these databases knows that repeating cloud patterns simply don't happen. Data compression doesn't work like that. Someone filled the missing window with placeholders. But why would they mask satellite imagery at the exact moment the comet brightened? A few researchers began speculating quietly, suggesting that the brightening wasn't caused by solar reflection at all. Some even dropped hints like, "Ever heard of non-thermal emissions? It's not behaving like dust. This looks directional." What exactly they meant, nobody explained. Around 3 p.m., I stepped outside to clear my head. The sky looked normal, calm, blue. But just at the edge of my vision, I noticed one of the high-altitude monitoring balloons drifting too low, way too low. Those balloons float at a fairly stable altitude, and if one starts dipping, it usually triggers an alert in the system. No alert came. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds until it disappeared behind a cloud. When I checked the balloon tracking dashboard, the coordinates for that particular unit were blank. Just a dash. No data, no logs, no last known position. I wasn't imagining it. I wrote down the coordinates on a sticky note before someone could erase them. When I came back inside, I found Tom leaning over my station. "You need to hear this," he murmured. He showed me a screenshot someone had posted anonymously on a private server, a capture of 3i Atlas taken through a high-contrast filter. It showed something inside the coma. Something that looked structured. Not metallic, not mechanical, but too regular to be ice. Before I could inspect it further, the screenshot vanished from the server. Removed by the administrator. The entire thread locked. Tom whispered, "There's talk in one of the closed groups that a few people observed a sudden shift in trajectory last night. Not big, but intentional looking." Intentional? I frowned. Comets don't make intentional moves. He shrugged helplessly. Some people think, well, they think it's responding to something. A signal. Or maybe avoiding something. Look, I don't believe half the stuff people are spreading now, but the data gaps? The forced updates? Someone's hiding something. Before I could respond, an alarm beeped, a small tone, barely audible, but one we all recognized. Unauthorized access detected. Everyone froze. The director walked in moments later, saying everything was under control. The alert was a false positive. Funny how fast he showed up. Almost like he was waiting for it. When the shift ended, I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the horizon. The sky looked too calm, too normal. And yet I felt like I was sitting in the center of a storm that hadn't started yet. At home, I finally opened the flash drive Mia gave me. Inside were 3 files. Only one would open. A single image. High resolution. Timestamped secretly. It showed the nucleus of 3i Atlas. And something protruding from it. Something angled. Something sharp. Something that didn't look like a natural fracture. The more I stared at it, the more uneasy I felt. The structure looked almost like... No. I'm not going to say it. Not yet. Instead, I'll say this. If the official data is so harmless, why is so much of it disappearing? Why do so many systems suddenly fail at the same exact second? And why are people being told to say nothing? Whether any of this means something. Or absolutely nothing? Well, The next few days felt like walking through a fog you can't see. Everything moved slowly, deliberately, like the world itself had decided to hold its breath. At the observatory, whispers replaced conversation. Keyboards clicked in cautious, deliberate rhythms. No one spoke loudly, no one laughed. Even the fluorescent lights above my workstation seemed dimmer than usual, though I knew they weren't. I started noticing patterns. Small things first, equipment behaving slightly off. The spectrometer readings fluctuating in ways the manual shouldn't allow. The imaging software introducing subtle color shifts where there shouldn't be any. I chalked it up to fatigue at first. But then other people mentioned the same things, almost at the same time, sometimes without talking to each other. You know, like some unconscious signal passing between them. One evening, around 9 p.m., I decided to check the comet's trajectory again, just to reassure myself. Using publicly available tools, I overlaid the predicted path with satellite imagery from the past week. That's when I noticed it, a tiny deviation. Almost negligible. Barely measurable. But consistent. And what caught my eye more was the pattern. The deviations weren't random. They formed a subtle curve, almost like the comet was adjusting its path deliberately, inch by inch. I know what you're thinking, comets shift all the time due to outgassing, solar wind, or minor gravitational nudges. I thought so too. Until I compared the data across several independent sources. All of them reported the same micro-deviations. And the interesting part? Those deviations only appeared in readings after midnight local time, never during the day. Almost like something was tracking activity on Earth, waiting, responding. There's a saying among a few veteran astronomers, nature doesn't need to hide, but someone might. That saying became real to me when I looked at a private data feed from a friend in New Zealand. He'd captured a high-contrast infrared image of 3I Atlas, and it showed something. A faint structure inside the coma. Not symmetrical. Not crystalline. Not random. But regular. Enough to make you pause and question every assumption you've ever held about interstellar objects. And of course, the moment I tried to verify it, the file vanished. Not deleted, not corrupted, vanished. Removed from the server without a trace. My friend didn't answer my calls for hours. When he finally replied, he said only, "Don't look too closely. You'll start seeing things you can't unsee." Meanwhile, in the public domain, theories about 3I Atlas started swirling like wildfire. Some said it was a natural interstellar comet behaving unusually. Some said it was breaking apart. Some speculated wildly about artificial objects, alien probes, even signals hidden in the coma's structure. One post I read on a private forum caught my eye. There's a rhythm to its light. Not random. Patterned. Almost communicative. I laughed at first. Then I realized the poster wasn't alone. Several independent observers noted small fluctuations in brightness, repeating every 45 minutes or so. Some amateurs even tried to record it as a Morse code of sorts. I couldn't verify their findings, but the consistency was uncanny. Around this time, strange atmospheric readings began appearing. High-frequency electromagnetic anomalies, brief but intense, over regions thousands of miles apart. No correlation to storms, no correlation to solar flares. Just sudden spikes lasting less than a minute. I compared the timestamps with 3I Atlas observations. And yes, they lined up. Almost perfectly. The anomalies weren't everywhere, only where monitoring stations were sensitive enough. But they were there. A few colleagues quietly suggested that someone might be testing detection equipment, perhaps governments, perhaps private labs. I didn't dismiss the idea, though part of me felt it was too convenient. Too neat. Almost as if the comet itself was interacting with the instruments. And then came the reports from amateur astronomers in remote parts of South America. They claimed to have seen a faint tail extension, not composed of dust or gas, but something darker, a shadow moving inside the bright tail. The shape wasn't round. Not at all. Straight edges. Angular lines. People argued over whether it was an artifact of the lens or a visual illusion caused by atmospheric distortion. I tried to analyze the images myself. Couldn't. The data had been compressed, color-corrected, and stripped of metadata before I even got it. I started compiling a log of anomalies, just for myself. Small details at first, minor magnetic fluctuations, disappearing entries, strange messages from colleagues, atmospheric pulses. Then patterns emerged. Minor at first, almost invisible to anyone but me. But cumulative. Enough to make me question everything I thought I knew about 3I Atlas. One night, I stayed at the observatory until past midnight. The sky was clear. Stars so sharp it hurt my eyes to look at them. And there it was again, that subtle turquoise streak, cutting across the void, brighter than I remembered, almost as if acknowledging my presence. I couldn't stop staring. Couldn't look away. And for a moment, I thought I saw a flash inside the nucleus, brief, almost imperceptible, like a signal reflected through ice. I blinked, and it was gone. Nothing on the monitors. Nothing in the recordings. Just me and the dark. Some researchers argue that such phenomena are illusions, optical tricks, sensor glitches, human error. Others suggest natural but unknown processes in interstellar comets. And in the quieter corners of the network, a few even whisper, "It's watching us." I don't know what to believe anymore. The official channels stay silent. The curated data looks perfect, sterile, unthreatening. But the anomalies continue. The patterns persist. And every time I think I understand something, another file disappears, another reading shifts, another person warns me to stay away. And yet I can't. I can't look away. There's a theory I've been reading quietly in one of the private research groups. Some interstellar objects carry energy patterns not found naturally. Some even respond to observation. Could it be true? Could 3I Atlas be one of them? Or is it all coincidence? A natural alignment of unrelated events? I don't know. But I do know one thing. Every night, when the observatory goes quiet and the city sleeps, I watch it move across the sky. Every flicker. Every shadow. Every slight deviation in its path. And every time, I feel a sense of something deliberate. Something intelligent. Or maybe just something we're not ready to comprehend. The deeper I go, the less the data makes sense. The more questions pile up. The more anomalies refuse to be explained. And the harder it is to ignore the nagging thought that whatever this is, it's not just passing through. It's observing. It's adjusting. It's aware, in a way that terrifies me and fascinates me all at once. And as I leave the observatory that night, I can't shake the feeling that the universe has shifted slightly. That 3I Atlas isn't just a comet anymore. It's something else. Something almost conscious. Whether that means danger or merely curiosity. Or simply coincidence. Well, that's up to you to decide. The mornings after those nights felt heavier, almost charged. I could feel it in the air, the way the wind seemed to shift slightly before I reached the observatory, the faint static in my car radio as I drove down empty streets. Something was different. Not the comet, no, it hadn't even risen yet, but everything else. The instruments hummed a little too steadily. Screens flickered in the corner of my eye. Even the lights overhead seemed reluctant to stay on. I began to notice another pattern, subtle changes in human behavior around 3I Atlas data. Colleagues who were usually open with observations now gave clipped responses, avoided eye contact, or pretended the anomalies didn't exist. One day, I asked a fellow astronomer about a spike in magnetic readings last week. He looked at me like I'd asked him to confess a crime. Just said, "Not our department. Don't worry about it." And walked away. It's strange how quickly secrecy breeds its own gravity. That evening, I ran a simulation to see if the comet's trajectory could explain the slight micro-deviations I'd been tracking for weeks. Using publicly available ephemeris data, I overlaid everything in a high-resolution orbital model. For a moment, it looked normal. But then I added the side-channel corrections that had mysteriously appeared in private feeds. Suddenly, the orbit wasn't just deviating, it seemed responsive. Small, almost imperceptible adjustments that, if interpreted loosely, looked like the comet was avoiding certain gravitational pockets intentionally. The thought made my stomach twist. Comets don't dodge. Comets follow physics. Gravity, momentum, solar wind, they don't choose. Yet when I double-checked the timings, the adjustments lined up with moments of Earthside observations, satellite passes, and even minor electromagnetic spikes recorded at observatories across the globe. A few amateur astronomers started sharing screenshots on encrypted forums showing strange filamentary patterns in the tail, almost like wires or channels. The images were fuzzy, low resolution, and heavily color-enhanced, but the shapes were consistent. Not everyone saw them. Not every data set captured it. But enough to make the community uneasy. Some suggested it was internal cometary currents. Others whispered darker possibilities, structures, technology, unknown phenomena. And in the quiet corners, the rumors took on a conspiratorial tone. It's not natural. It's responding. I couldn't shake the feeling that the comet's behavior and the surrounding anomalies were connected. The same day I noticed a faint, transient spike in electromagnetic readings that didn't align with any known source. It lasted less than 40 seconds, just enough to blink and miss it. The spike was logged by 3 independent stations, all thousands of kilometers apart. Some researchers shrugged and said it was equipment error, random cosmic noise. But the coincidence was too precise, same duration, same timestamp offset, repeating over 2 nights. I kept staring at the data, trying to rationalize. A natural explanation should exist. Outgassing, solar wind, magnetic interaction. But when I overlaid the precise spike moments with telescope logs, the intervals between them coincided perfectly with micro changes in the comet's tail. Not big changes, tiny, barely measurable. But measurable. Enough to make you ask the same question over and over, why? I tried to discuss it in a private group chat with some colleagues. One responded only hours later with a single message. Don't go down that rabbit hole. You'll start noticing things that aren't meant to be noticed. And that's when I noticed something else. A new pattern in the anomalies, timing aligned not only with observational passes but also with minor satellite maneuvers, debris avoidance tests, and atmospheric balloon readings I hadn't even known existed. The pattern wasn't obvious. It was subtle, hidden in plain sight. Almost as if the comet itself, or something within it, knew when we were watching. That night, I stayed past midnight again. Clear skies, perfect visibility. I watched through the high-powered telescope and saw a faint glow around the nucleus that I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't the usual turquoise hue I'd been tracking. This glow had an almost geometric precision, a faint triangular shape inside the core that appeared for mere seconds before fading. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks. Checked the monitor, nothing. The imaging system had recorded a generic, smooth blob. It wasn't an optical illusion. Not entirely. Others had reported similar sightings in private channels. But there was no way to verify them officially. Every unusual observation was either scrubbed, overwritten, or quietly dismissed. The next morning, I found an encrypted email waiting in my inbox. No sender. No signature. Just a single line. The comet is more aware than we are. Study patterns carefully. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a prank? A warning? Or someone who had access to information the rest of us could never touch? Regardless, it confirmed one thing: there were people, or entities, paying attention. And not just to the comet. To us. Then came the satellite anomaly reports. I didn't hear about them officially, they came through amateur alerts and open-source monitoring. Several low-orbit satellites experienced unexpected sensor interference. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing permanent. But the pattern was undeniable. Interference coincided exactly with the comet passing certain sky coordinates visible from the ground. There's a theory circulating quietly in private forums: the comet's activity may generate a field we cannot measure with conventional instruments. Some readings will appear only in sensitive satellites or ground sensors under specific conditions. Whether that theory holds any truth, I cannot confirm. But it explains why official agencies refuse to comment, why files disappear, why some instruments report random errors while others function normally. There's a knowledge gap. And in that gap, people start imagining things. By this point, I was obsessed. Checking orbital shifts multiple times a day. Comparing datasets across continents. Watching electromagnetic logs in real time. And each anomaly seemed to connect to another. A chain of tiny, almost invisible events leading to something that might never be explained. Late that night, I received an anonymous tip via private message. Someone claimed to have observed an angular shadow moving along the tail, a shape that should not exist naturally. I didn't know whether to take it seriously. But the fact that multiple, independent observers had reported similar phenomena could not be ignored. The shadow appeared briefly. Too brief to capture, too precise to be random. Almost like a signal. Almost like a message. I don't know if 3i Atlas is alive. I don't know if it's intelligent. I don't even know if we'll ever understand it. But I do know this: every time I track its path, every time I see an anomaly, every time a file disappears, I feel that subtle sense of being observed. And perhaps, that is the most unnerving part. Because when a comet notices you, there's no telling what comes next. By now, 3i Atlas had stopped feeling like a distant visitor. It wasn't out there, in the void, somewhere millions of kilometers away. It was close. Close enough that every telescope, every sensor, every instrument I had access to seemed to tremble when I pointed it in its direction. The readings weren't consistent, at least, not in any conventional sense. Brightness pulses, minor trajectory adjustments, unexplained shadows, all feeding into a narrative that no standard physics could account for fully. That morning, I noticed the first truly strange interaction between the comet and Earth's environment. A local observatory in northern Europe recorded a faint but intense magnetic spike, lasting exactly 52 seconds, with coordinates aligning perfectly to the comet's projected tail. Other nearby observatories saw the same spike. Some claimed it wasn't unusual, just random geomagnetic activity. But when I cross-checked satellite sensor logs, the timestamps matched exactly. It was too precise to be random. And then came the reports from high-altitude balloons over Scandinavia, noting sudden, almost rhythmic fluctuations in local atmospheric conductivity. Coincidence? Maybe. But the pattern repeated. The more I tracked, the more these coincidences built into something structured. I started noting every minor anomaly, electromagnetic readings, micro-deviations in orbit, faint shadows, brightness flickers, and slowly a map began forming in my mind. A map of influence. Of intentionality. Around noon, my email pinged. A file attachment from an anonymous source, a series of raw images, heavily compressed, taken through specialized infrared filters. The nucleus of 3i Atlas appeared clearly in one frame. And in that frame, something protruded. Angular. Regular. Almost like a carved edge, but not metal, not artificial in any normal sense. I studied it for hours. Could it be a dust jet? A natural fracture? Maybe. But the sharpness, the geometry. I couldn't reconcile it with any cometary physics I knew. Some amateur astronomers, posting in private forums, began mentioning similar shapes. Some even suggested that these structures were moving, subtly, within the coma. Others called it projection artifacts or data noise. But enough people reported it independently to make me question the official narrative. Something unusual was happening. Late that night, I received another message, short and cryptic. They are observing us as much as we observe them. Patterns matter. Watch the sequences. I didn't know who sent it. Or why. But the timing was impeccable, exactly during a faint, rhythmic pulse in brightness that several amateurs had noticed. I couldn't resist. I ran a sequence analysis, looking at brightness peaks over several weeks. The results were subtle but undeniable, a repeating rhythm, roughly every 43 minutes, fluctuating slightly with no apparent environmental cause. Some researchers online speculated it could be an unknown outgassing phenomenon. Others whispered darker possibilities, that the comet could be generating controlled energy bursts, almost as if aware of observation. And then, just after midnight, something even stranger happened. On a hunch, I opened a newly released satellite infrared feed. There it was, a shadow inside the tail, triangular, shifting slowly as the comet moved. Not round, not random. Deliberate. And then the image was gone, replaced with generic smooth frames. Someone had deleted it. Or overwritten it. I don't know which. I spent the next morning replaying every single observation in sequence, cross-referencing timestamps, locations, and anomalies. Patterns emerged. Tiny, almost imperceptible adjustments in orbit coinciding with spikes in electromagnetic activity. Angular shadows appearing during peak brightness. And a subtle glow inside the nucleus, pulsing with a faint, geometric regularity. The more I compared data across observatories, the stranger it became. Files that existed for a single download were suddenly restricted or removed. Data feeds that had been stable for years introduced random errors. Telemetry logs changed post facto. Colleagues stopped responding to questions about these anomalies or responded with vague warnings. Don't dig too deep. You'll start seeing patterns that aren't meant to be noticed. Despite the warnings, I couldn't stop. My obsession had taken hold. Every night, I would stay until the last astronomer left, scanning the sky, following 3i Atlas. I began noticing that the comet's brightness pulses seemed almost communicative. Too subtle to confirm, but consistent enough that I felt it, a rhythm. A presence. Something aware. By midweek, social media whispers began intensifying. Amateur astronomers from South America, Europe, and Australia reported similar phenomena, faint geometric shapes inside the tail, subtle brightness fluctuations, micro-deviations in trajectory. Most posts were quickly removed or disappeared without explanation. Some forums quietly acknowledged it with vague statements about sensor errors or natural anomalies. I don't know if it's natural. I don't know if it's intelligent. But the evidence, whatever it is, keeps repeating. The anomalies continue. The shadows, the pulses, the shifts, all of it builds into something that might be more than coincidence. Late one night, after a particularly intense observation session, I received a final anonymous tip. Record everything. Nothing is random. They will adjust if you ignore them. Adjust. That word stuck with me. Adjust. Not drift. Not orbit naturally. Adjust. The implication was terrifying. 3i Atlas may not just be a visitor. It may be reacting. Interacting. Responding. And as I sat there, staring at the comet through my telescope, a faint triangular glint appeared inside the nucleus, brief, almost imperceptible. Blinked. Gone. Nothing in the official data. Just me, and the feeling that I was being watched. I can't explain it. I can't prove it. All I know is that every anomaly, every deleted file, every subtle pulse, seems intentional. Whether 3i Atlas is conscious, sentient, or just an interstellar anomaly beyond our understanding. That's a question that no one has answered. And maybe, no one ever will. I couldn't sleep that night. The memory of the comet's angular shadow, the rhythmic pulses, the sudden deletion of every anomalous file haunted me. Even at home, far from the observatory, my mind kept replaying the images, the logs, the faint flashes I wasn't supposed to see. Every instinct screamed that 3i Atlas wasn't just a celestial visitor, it was something more. Something aware. Something that noticed us noticing it. By dawn, I was back at the telescope, alone. The observatory was eerily quiet, and the city outside was still asleep. The sky was clear, the stars piercing, and there it was, turquoise glow faint but persistent, moving slowly against the background of stars, deliberate, almost knowing. I focused the high-resolution tracker, and for a moment, I thought I saw a faint ripple within the nucleus. A flash that didn't match sunlight reflection. Too precise. Too structured. I adjusted filters, zoomed in, captured every frame I could. And then, as if responding to my attention, something shifted. Not dramatically, but just enough to notice a triangular shadow moved inside the coma, along the tail's edge, not random, not like debris, not like gas. I froze, breath caught. Blinked. When I looked again, it was gone. Nothing in the monitor. Nothing in the feed. Just a lingering sense of awareness, like the comet was observing me back. At that moment, a message popped up on my private channel, no sender, no signature, just the text. Patterns matter. Observation changes everything. Don't look away. I stared at it. My first thought, a prank. My second, warning. My third, truth. The timing matched perfectly with the micro-pulses we'd been tracking, subtle, repeating, almost like communication. Some researchers whispered that interstellar comets could have natural energy fields unknown to science. Others quietly suggested intelligence. A few even speculated that the comet adjusted its trajectory in response to Earth observation. I don't know what to believe. I only know what I feel. That feeling intensified as I tracked 3I Atlas through the night. Micro-deviations aligned with electromagnetic spikes. Shadows appeared in multiple observations. Satellite anomalies synchronized with brightness fluctuations. Something deliberate, was happening. And yet, nothing could be confirmed. Every anomalous reading, every strange shadow, every spike could be explained away by natural phenomena. Official reports remained clean, sterile, empty. And still, I couldn't look away. The following days blurred together. Each session revealed small, subtle shifts, the nucleus brightened in micropulses. The tail seemed to elongate slightly in one segment, then retract. Data logs disappeared or were overwritten. Colleagues became more cautious, more secretive, more reluctant to discuss anything. One even whispered, half to himself, it's alive in some way. Not conscious like us, but aware. Some theory circulated quietly in encrypted channels, maybe the comet was sending signals, interacting with Earth's electromagnetic field. Maybe it contained structures, angular fragments that weren't ice or rock, something artificial or natural beyond our understanding. Some even suggested it might be learning, observing us as much as we observe it. I tried to rationalize. Could it all be coincidence? Could patterns appear where none exist? Could shadows be artifacts, pulses just sensor noise, anomalies nothing more than alignment errors? Perhaps. But I couldn't shake the repeated precision of it all. The night I decided to document everything in a single log, I noticed the final anomaly. The turquoise glow pulsed differently, brighter, sharper, and for a brief instant, I swore the comet's path seemed to adjust slightly, just a few microdegrees, almost in acknowledgement. I froze, heart pounding. Could it be conscious? Could it sense my tracking, my observation? Or was it all an optical illusion, a coincidence, a trick of data processing? I don't know. Then I noticed something else. A faint reflection inside the nucleus, subtle, geometric, almost triangular, a pattern that wasn't present before. I blinked, looked again, and it was gone. Overwritten, sanitized, removed. I sat in the dark observatory, surrounded by quiet humming instruments, my mind spinning. Every file I'd compiled, every anomaly I'd tracked, every pulse I'd recorded, all of it pointed toward something inexplicable. A presence. A reaction. A sequence. Something that seemed aware, observing, adapting. And yet, no one official would comment. Data remained curated, scrubbed, verified. Whispers, rumors, private messages, All that remained were hints, suggestions, fleeting observations that could vanish in an instant. I can't say 3-Eye Atlas is alive. I can't say it's intelligent. I can't even say that these patterns aren't coincidence. All I know is that every time I track it, every time I record its micro-movements, every time I witness a fleeting shadow or a pulse, I feel watched. The last image I captured that night showed the comet as a faint turquoise smear across the void, its tail stretching behind like a ribbon. But inside, for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something that wasn't supposed to be there. Sharp angles. A faint glint. A structure I can't explain. I've shared the images with a few trusted colleagues. Their silence speaks volumes. Some nod, some avert their eyes, some refuse to comment at all. And I understand. There are theories, yes. Many. Some claim it's natural, some artificial, some alive in a way humans can't comprehend. There are patterns, signals, micro-adjustments, shadows, glows. And yet, everything official says, nothing unusual. I leave it to you to decide. Was 3-Eye Atlas just a comet? Or was it something else entirely? I don't have the answer. But every night, when the sky is clear and the world is asleep, I look up. And every night, I feel it watching me back. Whether that means curiosity, intelligence, or something beyond our understanding. That's for you to decide.